Okay, let's make this into a Mick Ping. Welcome back to the Mick Golf Shop, and I did a video where we were making a hybrid for a 7-footer. Turns out it worked out pretty good. So now he sent me a Ping. Okay, a Ping G30, 10.5 degree Ping G30. Now, guy's 7 foot long, and we're going to make this a ridiculously long club in my opinion, but he's 7 foot tall. So in reality, it's good for him. So it gave me an opportunity to talk to you guys about Ping adapters. Now, is there anything wrong with a Ping adapter? Absolutely not. It's just different. Okay. So if you look at that, I don't know if you can get it all there. Anyway, it starts out with a big 0 for being neutral, and then it's got 2 minuses and 2 pluses. The big minuses are 1 degree, and the plus is a plus a degree. And the little one is just over half a degree. Now, how does that get set in there? Well, if you start with the 0 in the back, in the very back, that would make this thing 10.5 degrees. Now, I put it together earlier, and it's a little lofted, so we're going to take a degree off because he needs a degree off anyway. So we're going to set it in there like that. So people are like, well, how come you just don't put in the tip? Well, because you have to have the whole head. This head, thank goodness, weighs right at 199. And when we're going to make it extraordinarily long, then it doesn't make the swing weight extraordinarily heavy. Now, aggressive swinger, so we had an 80 gram hybrid shaft, and so now he had an 80 gram X-Flex. Now, we talked about shafts before, but everything starts with about a 60 gram as your standard. Now, most people will say the 70 is an S, 80 is an S. Okay, well, here's the thing. When you say it's an S and your standard is 60 and you have to put more stuff on it, i.e. 10 grams more weight, that's going to impact a lot of everything. It's going to be more stiff. Okay, the 80 gram is going to be more stiff. So as a whole, now it's not everyone, but this is as a whole, the 80 gram X-Flex is going to be extraordinarily stiff. And then in fact, it's going to be more, it starts at extra stiff, so it's going to be even more than extra stiff. Well, one of the biggest issues that this fella had was laboring trying to swing. Well, yeah, because you've probably got a 2-3 X-Flex sitting in your club. So now we're going to back it down to truly in that X-Flex range. So we talked, and I said, okay, well, he still liked the heft of the club, so we stayed at 70 grams because it's going to even be longer, so it's still going to have a swing weight. I said an S-Flex, and the guy got kind of nervous, but when we explained the whole add the weight thing, turns out he was okay with it. So what I did was we're going to stay with the Accra shaft. Okay, this is an Accra, all right, I-Series Tour. I-Series Tour. Now, what makes the difference here? Well, you can see there's a different discoloration at that tip. That's a little more reinforcement, so it makes it a little more stable at the bottom end. So, Mr. 7-footer, you can get after this club all you want. Okay. Now, why do I do it with the Accra? Well, Accra does something that not every, well, in fact, none of them do. They make a family of shafts. Family shafts being, let's just say this is your 60 gram shaft. They make a 70 gram fairway wood and an 80 gram hybrid. Okay, and what they do, of course, they get progressively heavier, but the profiles are not just, oh, let's make it heavier, cut it off, and you got a driver. They actually have 3 separate profiles so that the clubs act dynamically the same, because you have a 200 gram, 205 gram head for a driver, and it gets smaller and probably about the 213 range, and then it gets even smaller for the hybrid, all right, probably in the 240-ish range. So you have to have different profiles for it to act differently, and that's what this group does. Not just in this series, this I series, but they have an FX that does the same thing. So it's really easy to say, hey, we found a driver that works for you, are interested in a fairway or a hybrid, and that's what we're doing, only we're doing this one in reverse. So instead of the driver, he found out he liked the hybrid. Okay, so we've got it oriented, the tip oriented in there. Now this thing comes with a piece that we shove in the end of this. It's part of the tip installation process, and I imagine that's to kind of give it a different sound or even a different feel depending on the type of shaft. And we'll go over that during the install process, but right now this is just the build. Okay, so we want to see, I got my, can't see it, but I got my fishing line. I get it on the shaft. Now, we talked about spining and flowing. Well, this guy comes with lines already on it, which is a great help to me. Thank you, Acura. Get it lined up. Now, the thing he's going to like is I can almost go to 48 inches on this. So I might actually get to tip trim a little bit. We'll see what happens. So we're starting at 46 inches. Okay, 46, and I got 246. So I'm just a hair right at the 6.5. So I'm right in the middle of the X-Flex range on my chart. So that means exactly what we talked about is going to happen, right? It's going to be in the X-Flex range. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tip it maybe just a little bit more just to make sure that it acts the way it's supposed to. Now you're like, Jim, you just said all this stuff. You're right. But what I think is going to happen here is Mr. Aggressive 7-footer, typically when you're aggressive in your hybrids, you're even a little more aggressive in your driver. So I'm going to take just a little bit, not a bunch, maybe a 1/4 inch tip, in order for it to feel like it's going to stay with you when you go to do this. And so we're going to flow it, and then we're going to install it. So let's take a look at the flow. So how close was I? I'm on that red line. I got to readjust the face. So I'm a little bit off. There we go. Not by much though. See if that helped. Nope, I got out of line there. Oh, it's falling off. Right, move it the other way. Really? So you can see that's just that little bit makes that much difference. Boom. Got it. Take it off and we'll mark it. So I'm going to cut it and glue it. So let's take you over here in a second. Okay, we're going to finish this off. So I've already prepped the tip. I cut it off just a little bit. And there's the little rubber piece that they want to put in it. So put a little graphite glue in there. I'm going to shove that thing in there as good as I can. There's really not a whole lot of room to put in it. Alright. And then you trim it all off. So it's nice and flat. So we got that in there. Then a little glue. Of course, we made the epoxy. We stirred it for at least a minute to get all the bubbles out. A little bit of quick center. And make sure that it's got a good dose of epoxy on the inside. And I line it up with my mark. And I'll wipe it off. And there we are. So now all you have to do is let it dry, and then we're going to cut it to length, and we're going to put the grip on it and send it back to the East Coast. Okay, it's the next day, and the Ping driver is now dry, and I sent an email to the 7-footer and told him, hey, look, let's make this 46.5, because he was used to using an extraordinarily longer club, and that way, because 9 times out of 10, you get people that get a little bit longer or too long a club, and with the things he was telling me he was doing with his driver, we need to shorten it down. Now, short is all about perspective. This is going to be a 46.5-inch driver. So that's, an inch over standard. And you're like, well, Jim, that's only an inch, and he's a 7-foot guy. Well, there's really not a lot of correlation. There's no linear, he's this tall, you get that driver. He's this tall, you get that driver. Most drivers nowadays are too long anyway. So if you go with 45 even being standard, where most drivers are 45.5, most of the studies I've done, 44 to 44.5, sometimes 44 3/4, pretty much the best length. Even my testing has shown that. So even if you use that as an, we're 2 inches over what I would consider standard, and that's a pretty good number. Now we put on a Jumbo Max medium for him, and he said it was way too big. Well, it was bigger than he was used to, but he was putting a bunch of wraps under a Jumbo. So we're going to hit the middle of both worlds here. We're going to give a little love to Jumbo Max. Jumbo Max. All right, Jumbo Max. This one's, and this is what they call the Junior. All right, their version of small. Now this layout is new this year, and a lot of it came with the fact that a professional golfer is using his grip, and the guys at Jumbo Max couldn't be nicer. They're out of Indiana, a bunch of good group of guys. Now the thing when we put, putting on a grip is the same, except for the Jumbo Max is a little longer than average. Okay, and the reason why the Jumbo Max would work pretty good here is because it's also heavier than average. Okay, so we talked about that swing weight and being balanced. Well, this is one of those good things to have, because with that extra length that you put on there, you put a little extra weight on the back, and that tends to balance it out instead of the guy swinging a sledgehammer, which most 7-footers have to do because of the length. They get to enjoy a swing weight that most other people get to use. This comes in handy, particularly when you get older. So we're going to do a quick spec, and we'll do a cleanup, and we'll talk a little bit more about what we just did. So hold on, and we're going to move over. Okay, so we're going to do the finishing touches, which is always putting a layer of wax on the club. And for me, that's just a layer of protectant. Will it stay there forever? No, but it's a good start. And just like I've always said before, it's like having I do a lot of car cleaning. I'm a clean car guy, And you know, everybody puts wax on their car to protect it. Well, why do you do that? So you beat down the UVs, it beads water, that kind of stuff, and it's a protectant. So I've applied it to this. So what did we do? Well, we took a Ping driver that weighed in at 200 grams for a 7-foot golfer, okay? And we put and through our discussions with him, we made a hybrid. Apparently the hybrid worked out pretty good. So instead of going from the driver to the hybrid, we're going from the hybrid to the driver. And we're going backwards. So now whenever I do this, there's always that chance. I got to always take into account that the golfer is very in tune with their own swing. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So there's the risk of doing this over the phone. However, so far I've been pretty close or pretty successful. So what we did with this one is, to keep him in tune, we used again this is new, the Acura 70 gram stiff I-Series Tour. Okay, Tour's new this year, and the reason what it is, it's this piece here. It's a little more reinforced down here, so if a guy's a little more aggressive, a little quicker, the head stays in line with him. Okay, and that's what we're looking for. Is I'm pretty certain with an 80X shaft that was currently in the club, that was way too much weight, way too much flex, even for this guy that swings really fast and really aggressive. So what we did is we took a stiff shaft, made it a little heavier for the guy because that's what he's used to, and then I trimmed it a little bit. So Jim, you're about a 6.75. You're in the upper end of the X-Flex range, which is just a little bit more than the hybrid, so you should be okay there. The Acura has been an excellent shaft for us this year, and I like it because of the family of shafts. So now we know what we need if we ever go into a fairway or anything like that. Now the other part is if you really like your stuff to stand out, these guys will paint this. So if you want pink, green, whatever, they'll make it. Okay, obviously at an additional cost, but your stuff looks pretty cool. Finally, we put on a Jumbo Max grip. Jumbo Max grip. All right, this is the junior size, because this is just the junior size has been incredibly popular this year, and because guys with bigger hands, sometimes the jumbo grips are just a little too small, and these are a little bit bigger than the jumbo grips. So, and they're kind of a soft, and they got a much better pattern on them than the originals did. They actually have a grip, and they have a really good feel. So I think you're going to like that. Now, as far as specs, we talked about specs, because when you make a really long club, you end up, the swing weight just gets out of control. Particularly when you use something heavier than standard being around 60, 65 grams. So we're in that 70 to 75 gram range. So, you know, you're above that 45 and a half, things start getting heavy. Well, we talked about with this guy being heavier, that and this being just a tad lighter, that we might actually get a normal swing weight, and we got pretty doggone close. You know, on the average, drivers are around D2-ish, right? This is a D4, so that's not bad. I adjusted this. It's a 10.5. Even for a guy that swings normal, a 10.5 is probably, or swings at the swing speed that Jim swings at, that's probably a little too much. So I cranked her down and I checked it. I'm glad we didn't have to go the other way, because it added a truckload of loft. Now, Jim, if you're listening, the thing with the sole on this club, and for the rest of you that have Pings, when you go to set this thing down at address, and if you let it rest, it opens wide open, okay, and it virtually adds probably 4 degrees of loft when you let it go at address. So it means if you let it sole, it'll do this, okay. And when it does that, that's the reason why you get everybody with those hit them high. So you got to set them so they're supposed to be like that, which is going to give you a slightly closed face. So a lot of people will open it up so it looks good to them in that little open position, okay? But what happens is that it hits the ball high and off to the right. Well, now you're going to have to set it closed in order to hit the ball in the direction that it needs to be hit. That's just a design thing for Ping. Now, is Ping a bad club? Absolutely not. Ping does a very, very good job at making heads. All right, that's their thing. They make heads, and they take pride in being their own company and having their proprietary shafts and their names on their grips and the whole 9 yards. Their grips are really good. Their heads are really good. Shafts, well, let's just say sometimes they need work. Okay, because you know, when we try and talk in golf, we try and talk about absolutes, and when you have over 3 million golfers out there, there's always going to be, you know, a small percentage that doesn't fit, and then it's not an absolute. So you know, if it works for you, then it's not a bad shaft. Okay, I'm just talking about guys that are a little more aggressive. That's not what they tend to put in there. They're hitting the maximum mark for somebody who might be a little smoother, maybe even an early releaser. And then they do have some that are a little more stout. You just have to know what to buy. So, Jim, here you go. We're going to send it out Monday. It's to you. Anybody else that's interested in doing a build, all you have to do is email me at clubmaker@mcgolf.net, and we'll discuss what it is that you need, and we'll go through the same process. And you might very well end up on a video on the McGolf channel. So, we got the nice build. Hopefully Jim likes it. And if you got any questions, put them in the note or in the questions below. And like the video and subscribe, and that way you can see more of these. And let's see your scores go low.